to A Well-Designed Business. My name is Luann Nigara, and I'm so glad you found this podcast. Together with my husband Vince and our partner Bill, we have grown our company WindowWorks from the ground up. So I know and I understand the challenges you face in running your interior design business. I also know that your talent alone isn't enough to ensure your success. So on this podcast, we talk about strategies and practical steps to help you grow your business. But make no mistake about it, we have our share of fun here too, mixed in with those aha moments that I love so much. This isn't fluff. Nobody has time for that. Whether you are a new interior designer or a seasoned designer, I am here to help you create and to manage the kind of interior design firm that you dream of. It's straight talk and it's action. Are you ready? Let's get started. Hi, welcome to A Well-Designed Business. Today, I have Becky and Nate Vandenbroek from Hygge Design+Build on the show. If you are thinking about getting in the design build industry, then this episode is for you. Becky and Nate wanted to come on to help you break into the design build world and share the things that they think are important when you consider which builder to work with. Both Becky and Nate have what we call our Erika Ward transferable skills, things that they brought to their business that they learned from other parts of their life. Becky's father was a builder and Nate was a previous project manager. Together, they ditched their 9-to-5 in 2020 and formed Hygge Design+Build. They have actually, though, been building homes for themselves since 2012. Their Hilltop Farm home won a National Best in American Living Award from the NAHB and was featured in a national edition of Dwell magazine, a joint venture with Marvin Windows. Their Slate House, their most recent building, was selected by Marvin Windows for their nationwide advertising campaign and will be included in an upcoming Dwell magazine. As you can tell, they are a pretty fabulous pair, and what you're going to learn today is that they're pretty dynamic together as well. Lots of fun. They're here to give their advice on the relationship with the builder and to tell you about some red flags to look for as well. Before we start, I want to tell you about our sponsor, Duke Renders. Duke Renders can take your projects and your business to the next level. You know how frustrating it can be when your clients don't fully understand or cannot visualize your design concepts. Even though you use swatches, drawings, mood board, and software like AutoCAD and SketchUp, sometimes they just still don't get it. Well, what Duke Renders offers is 100% accurate, done-for-you 3D renderings that present your designs in their entirety. This way, you can make sure that your clients fully understand and fully visualize your design before execution. It saves you a ton of headaches. It saves you lots of back and forth, and it also saves a lot of time because people get right from, oh, that's cool, to yes, I'll have one, please, a room like that. Here's my money. Okay, very different path when they can actually see the finished product when you're in your first design presentation with them. Pretty cool, right? So book an intro call to start creating your designs in beautiful photorealistic renderings with Duke Renders. Go to dukerenders.com/Luann. All right, dukerenders.com/Luann. All right, let's get to Nate and Becky, shall we? Hey, Becky. Hey, Nate. Thanks so much for joining me on A Well-Designed Business today.
Hi, Luann.
Hi, Luann.
So you guys are like the unicorns in our world. We love it when we get to speak to actual builders, designers and builders.
All right, Nate, you're on the spot.
That's it.
Yep.
That's it. So here's the thing. You said on the intake form, one of the takeaways that you would love to be able to share with the audience today, with your colleagues and your peers, is how to get into the design build arena. Now, I know you guys come to it from a circuitous path around in a circle and back again, but when you wrote that down, what were you thinking? What is the first thing that comes to mind that you want to share with your colleagues who aspire to be in this end of the industry?
I think, for anybody that wants to get into design build, one of the biggest takeaways would be to understand the build process and what that looks like. Because I'm sure Nate can attest to the, Mr. Builder where, okay, I need this, I need that. And ideally, I mean, you have pretty much all that done before we break ground. So, yeah, just understanding, I just assume that everybody knows this, how a house is built. But really understand that process, the steps in that process, what does that look like? What is the timeline? And then find those builders that kind of have that aesthetic that you love. Because I always think it's more enjoyable as a designer to find that builder that's building what you think is super cool, and that kind of matches and aligns with your design aesthetic or what you want your design to be, and hopefully just have that partnership with said builder. I don't know, Nate, you can jump in.
Thoughts on it?
Yeah, from the build side of it, having I'm not going to equate Becky to a sub or a designer to a sub, but if you develop a long-term relationship with a particular builder, you'll develop a shorthand or a language around how things are done. Like we do our trim a certain way, or the designer always specs a certain trim a certain way, or whatever, and you'll be able to, without having a lot of explanation and repeating all that stuff over every single time, you'll be able to tell the builder, we're going to do trim profile X. And the builder will know instantly, okay, this is the kind of material I got to order. I need the shoe mold. I need, 3 layers of whatever. And we're going to cap them this way. And so it speeds up the process.
Okay.
And we like it because it provides a seamless, almost vertical for the client instead of them having to shop or to find somebody else. It's all in one thing. If I have a question or Becky has a question, it's not a laborious process to go reach out to somebody else. You can see my desk sitting in the background of her head. She turns around and says, "Hey, idiot, what are we doing? What are we doing with X?" Right?
Well, that's where you and I mean, we're fortunate because we're design build under one roof. So it's super easy. Whereas, outside designers not in a build team, I think it definitely is a lot more challenging than what Nate and I have going on here.
So let me ask you something. Is with your particular business model, is it that what you do, Becky, in the design arena to some extent is as separate as if you were an outside designer and then you're delivering to him like a design spec book, just like you would to an outside builder? Like, it's not that you're doing it all by shorthand and phone, talking across the desk. You're still delivering it as if you were delivering it to a stranger builder. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's the same process, whether it's in-house or if you're going to deal with an outside builder. And I think a lot of those things, like I said, they should be picked out and selected before the builder even breaks ground.
Right.
But then, that's not the end of it either. I mean, once Nate breaks ground, I'm still going on site during rough-in trades. And, what does that look like? And what do you have to look for? And once the build keeps progressing, I'm still involved with, field measurements and just, sometimes taking on a site supervisor role if Nate's hung up somewhere. Or interacting with the trades. But yeah, and then once, they get rough in drywall, Nate likes to have like an actual, all the cabinetry elevations and everything kind of stapled to each room. But, contractors are messy individuals and, it gets lost. And so I saw, and maybe it was from one of your podcasts, somebody was saying that they put a QR code.
Yes, that
in
was
every
on the
room.
show.
Was that you?
Yes.
And I'm like, that's genius. Like, because they all know how to work a phone, hopefully.
Yeah. What's
Thought it was
funny?
genius.
I just want to correct myself. I said yes to, but I was not answering yes, it was on the podcast. I think we both saw it on Instagram, on somebody's stories on Instagram.
I was like, brilliant.
That's genius, right?
It is.
Yes.
It's genius.
Yes.
And Nate would probably love it. I don't think I ever told you that yet, but yeah.
No, I've seen it before too. And, even like warranty, and when you hand something over to the client, you usually give them a giant binder.
Yeah.
Now you give them essentially
QR
a
code.
website or some kind of document that they can go to and then
It's
look up
all
a bunch
there,
of stuff.
which is
Yeah.
so much like nicer actually, because you never need that binder until you're several years into the house. And then it's like,
Right.
where's the binder? And then like, I know us, when we built a house, I could find the binder, but I was like, you're kidding me now. Every appliance is in this binder except the one that broke. Like, what is exactly with that? Like, I remember it's exactly what happened. I'm like, oh
Yeah.
my goodness. All right. It's like I got 20 warranty things in here except this one. Right. So, okay. So the thing is, does your business model, like, will you do design without build and will you do build without design? Or do you always come as a package deal?
I will do design separate from Nate. I've had out of state clients where I've been doing some like e-design, virtual design stuff. Nate's designed home plans for some clients out of state. Locally, I've worked with a couple builders other than Nate for design services. But when we do a build, we typically come as a team. Um,
Okay.
just because we have a
Yeah.
certain design aesthetic and style that we like to do, and
Mm-hmm.
it's all one package, like it goes together for our brand.
Right.
But I also take our brand out as a design service with other builders, not a lot of the time,
Mm-hmm.
usually with builders that I know personally and have a working relationship with in some aspect. Because again, I think it can be difficult to, at least for me, um, work with a builder that I don't know. I don't know their process. Do they use a project management software system, which is a big red flag? That's one of the red flags I was talking about is if you're
Right.
going to work with a builder, figure out what is their process, like interview them, find out, do you use a project management software system? We use one. They're one of the major players. They were at the build show this year. And that is a huge game changer. I mean, if you're not able to have a clear line of communication with a builder and you're not on the same page with his process, your process, I mean, it's going to be a disaster. It's not going to go well. And there's
Mm-hmm.
still builders out there that use paper. Like they don't
Right.
even use a Google spreadsheet.
Right. Right.
They're old school, which
Right.
yeah, it's I don't know how they do it, but it's not
Do
fun.
you yeah, and do you think that, I mean, is it generational at this point or is it level of professionalism, expertise? In other words, I feel like I'm going to run into a builder that might be 35 years old that is doing the paper and is doing the fly by the seat of the pants and is saying, "Hey lady, what faucet did you order? I'm ready to put the roughing in." Like at the, instead of like having it been delivered to him or her before break ground. Like I don't think it's generational, is it? I think it's commitment to the profession, isn't it?
I think it's a little bit of A, a little bit of B, and then there's a C that I'll throw in there. Um, it is generational. It is trying to be professional, but then I also think the level of clients that you're dealing with, not everybody can afford, to hire an interior designer and to tack that on and to do that kind of thing. So our level of clientele, we require it, we want it, but it may not be in the budget for some people, right?
Right. Okay.
Which is unfortunate, but it's just kind of the nature of the beast.
And when you're talking about in the budget, you mean like this project management software is expensive for a builder to have? Is that what you're saying? It's an expensive.
Yeah, that and to have an interior designer involved on the
Right. Of
project
course,
for
that we
some
know.
certain builds,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Some builders, like client come to them and say, we have $500,000. We have to spend every single bit of it on the house. We
Right.
can't afford the $5,000 to go hire an interior designer and have her pick stuff out.
Right.
So,
Understood.
$5,000.
Yeah, I know. I was thinking it's not 20.
well, I mean, I'm taking a percentage of the overall budget,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
No, but
But I
it's
think going back to the whole project management software, I mean, I think that, yeah, there might be some issues with the cost of it, but it could also be just volume. I mean, I can't imagine that a builder that's doing a high volume isn't using some type of project management software, but
Mhm.
you know, old school. I think the one builder that I knew, he was just more old school and
Yeah.
just that's how
That
he's
where it
always
is
done it.
generational. Yeah, that's where it
Hmm.
is. And it's not
I think it's
easy.
generate. I think it's generate. A lot of people use their phones for a lot of things, but builders want to build stuff, right? The last thing they want to think about is, did I go in and check the Gantt chart today? Did I go in and check my specs today? Did I go in and look at the messages? And like, I'm guilty of that all the time. I have to set a time in my schedule and during the day where I go in and I update.
Yeah.
Are we allowed to say names of products
Sure.
on here? I don't know.
Right.
Yeah, Builder Trend is the one that we use.
Okay.
Do we get
And
paid for saying that?
No, if anybody does, it'll be me, sweetie, right?
Yeah.
yeah,
All right. We're going to get you some more money, Luann.
sponsored by.
That's it.
So-
They can sponsor the show if they want.
Yeah,
They're a good one. I think Brad uses them.
You can work your affiliate on the back end, Beck.
Yes. We got some more to drop.
That kind of leads into like how to run a successful business.
Right.
Builder Trend forces a process,
Mm.
which a lot of builders don't, like I said, they want to build. They have their process in their head, and it's to get stuff out and to get things going and wrangle subs. Managing everything for the software is the last thing on their plate.
And it's hard.
And so
It's
that
hard to
usually
learn a
flies.
new software, right?
Oh.
And if you're already successful and you've got a process, I mean, even here at WindowWorks, we sold the company to my son-in-law, and he's trying to take the company paperless, right? It's a 40 plus year company, and it's a bear like converting it over to, and it's a very systemized business, but it's systemized based on paper, And so in the last 18 months, he's done a good job on moving things over. But it's, I think it sounds like to me that if a builder is well established and also possibly is generationally from another era, it's like I'm saying, like WindowWorks, it's a big ship to change, right? Whereas if I am a smaller builder, maybe I do 1 or 2 builds a year. Like if I'm open-minded, even if I am in my 50s or 60s, I might say, hey, this could be cool. This could make my life better. So I love, Nate, that you brought up that it's A, B's, and C's. It's all different reasons why somebody might or might not. But Becky, your original point with it was, as a designer, assuming that you are a designer that is organized and has a design process and delivers a design spec book prior to break ground, when you are looking to work with builders, one criteria is to align aesthetic, and that just makes it more joyful, it sounds like. But the second is, you might not toss a builder out that doesn't use a platform, but that's a good indicator that this process might be a little bit more buttoned up. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, totally. And I feel like if you work with a builder that has, the design aesthetic that you love or that you want to go into, I mean, it's great for your portfolio too. So you can get something out of the back end as well and have that agreement up front. Don't just assume that the builder is going to let you come in and photograph and, so get that figured out on the front end, get it figured out, like who gets credit for what, how is it going to get tagged on social media, all that fun stuff before, get it in writing, get it in writing from the homeowner too, that it's going to be okay to, take photos and do that type of thing. But yeah, in the end, find somebody that, design aesthetic meshes and, you use that for your portfolio.
And then do you guys do also like renovations, or do you only do strict full on new builds?
We mainly do customs, but we've been doing more renovations, especially for clients. We have one right now that there was a budget issue with doing a new build. And I was like, well, let's go see if we can find a house. And we found a house and we just wiped out the whole main floor. We'll do more extensive renovations, but for the most part, it's customs.
Okay.
The renovations are fun. I mean, everybody likes to see the before and afters. I tell Nate.
Yeah.
And they're kind of a pain, but I don't know. I like to see before and afters, and it usually can happen quick. But the one reno we did was almost just as long as a new build. So
that was a big one, though. That was But we're not a onesie twosie. We don't just do a kitchen or a bath. We'll do designs for those kinds of things, but no, I'm not staffed up to handle the turnover of a kitchen every 2 or 3 months or something
like the
like
smaller
that.
renovations.
That's interesting that you've phrased it that way. So in other words, what you're saying is, you're always going to have the bigger long-term full-on builds, new construction, new and custom going on. So to do the onesie twosie kitchens over here, you would have to have more people on your team.
Yes.
Okay. That makes sense. That's interesting. It's so funny when things like that are like so obvious, and I never would would have thought of it before. It's like, because you can't pull your crew off of a big build that's got a timeline that's
Mm-hmm.
costing tens of thousands of dollars every month to execute, to go and do a $200,000 kitchen over here, right?
Yep.
Interesting. So it's,
Well, if somebody had $200,000
oh,
for a
you might do
kitchen, I
it.
might talk to them. but
Okay.
but if when they come in and say, "Yeah, we've got like 10 grand, can we redo the whole kitchen?" No,
Got
we're
you.
not
Got
gonna.
you. Right. I want to put an island here. No, sweetie, call
Yeah.
somebody else, right? Like, okay. Right. And
Yep.
it's valid. Like, it might make a complete positive change to the kitchen, but it's just not your lane, right?
Yep.
Okay. Okay.
Exactly.
So the thing is, Becky, it's funny because you said something that you're like, I just really thought mostly people, designers, knew how to do this. But you grew up in this, right? You grew up on construction sites. You grew up. This is like your alphabet here. First this, then that. This is what's next. This is what this trade needs, right? Talk to us a little bit about that upbringing with your dad being a builder.
Yeah, so he was a builder, residential spec homes. He actually would buy the land, put in the road, put in the utility, so more of like a developer, spec builder. And he did like maybe, I think 3 or 4 different developments. He built probably about 80 plus spec homes.
Wow.
So growing up, I mean, I didn't see him much, but he was always on a construction site. And so I'd always see, here comes a cement truck. Okay, what are they doing? They're pouring the footings, they're putting in the foundation, the base. So I just got to see the whole process of it. And then as I got older, I went and got my real estate license and then ended up listing a lot of the spec homes. So not only was I helping him with the interiors, I was also helping list the homes and sell them. So yeah, I mean, he did residential, he went into commercial, he built some commercial buildings that my mom still owns to this day that they rent out. He built a 152 unit apartment complex. My mom is 81 and she still runs those apartments to this day.
Wow.
So he really was very entrepreneurial in the building business, being residential, commercial, and then, multi-unit building and housing. And so kind of everything. So got to learn a lot, as much as I could, before he passed in 2021. So
Mm.
I think Nate and I had just started, maybe we started in 2020 during COVID with our first like kickoff build to the public. So yeah, I think he would have been very happy to see kind of where we've come and
Mm-hmm.
where we're at now. And I mean, it's hard because he was my go-to. I'd always call him and ask him, what would I do here? What would you do about this? He didn't deal with a lot of clients because he built
Yeah.
specs. So he
Yeah.
didn't have
Yeah.
to answer to anybody, which,
So much
that's
nicer.
nice. But I mean, we like our clients, we make lots of good friends, and I
Right.
mean, it can go both ways. So,
Yes. Yeah. Positives and
but
negatives.
yeah, I grew up and found out, learned a lot.
That's awesome. And Nate, you like spent what, 10, 15, 20 years in tech? Like, how do you, in
Yeah.
IT, how do you
Yeah.
like just know how to build a house? I can see Becky, right? Like, she's like grew up, osmosis, right? But what's your background? How do you get to be the builder in this little, duo here?
Well, I did a lot of DIY on a number of homes that I've owned,
Okay.
like renovated them top to bottom,
Oh,
gutted and rearranged hot flooring and everything like that, and just did a lot of work on my own houses. And then Becky and I, when we met, we built our first house together, and that's when I got my GC license.
oh.
So
My
I
dad was like,
really,
"You should just go get your license, Nate."
yeah. So from Pete again, he really educated me on the first go through about here's all the things you got to think about. But my background in IT, I was a project manager, and it's called a solution architect, and those jobs are actually very parallel, right? Running a project, whether it's a waterfall build like software system or it's a build, they're the same kind of skill sets.
Yeah.
You're still wrangling subs. You're still asking people to get stuff. When are you delivering me X, Y, and Z? And it also, yeah, you get a bigger picture, and then designing those systems as well also translates to all the infrastructure that goes into a software system is very much like plumbing and electrical and heating and stuff that goes into a house. And so there's a lot of translating stuff that translates.
That's interesting. I, again, would never have considered it that way, but when you explain it, it makes perfect sense, right? It really is, putting all those components in. It's visualizing building something that's technical or building something
Yep.
that's physical. And, it's a funny thing because over the course of, with Window Works, having done shop at home sales for 4 decades in and out of people's houses 3, 4, 5 times a day, that's thousands of people that I have met over the years. And that, that persona is out there more often than you would think, that the tech person, that IT person also has that super creative thing. Like I can remember, like over the years, it's like this person is this IT person, but you go in and their study is filled with wood carvings that they carved, right? Or
Mhm.
like not oil paintings, but paintings that they did. It's like, it's interesting that it's not, I think at first glance you'd be like, oh, you're tech, you're like mental, you're cerebral, but a lot of you have that creative side that comes out. So it's interesting to know that you're going to work every day building computers, but in your spare time at home, you're renovating and building and doing the carpentry in your own homes, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
When I was doing IT, I would use a lot of house building analogies to explain to clients for building a software system, uh, how it's going to go. So like data is your electricity, and you need to do all of these data mappings to get the electrical from the power grid into the different spots in your house.
Oh,
And then the
interesting.
UX, or the interface that you see on the website, that's the paint and the windows and the tile and all that kind of stuff. And so we need all this infrastructure and things behind it, and then we surface it with other things.
It's so cool, right? Like that's cool stuff, right, Becky?
Yawn.
Ah! I love you guys.
You lost me when you started saying interface and
Oh my
all
You
that
God,
can't
talk.
that
you
is
can't give me credit for
too
anything. Not
funny.
possible.
Oh my God, that is too funny. She goes to yawn.
Oh, I love you, babe.
Oh no, you can only say that to somebody you love, right? Because like
Yeah.
otherwise, it's
Well,
like,
yeah.
what's going on here? Do we need therapy? That's so
That or a
funny.
drink.
That's it, right? One or the other.
We had a
Okay.
rough night Friday, so we're still trying to recover.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Talk to me about. So we mentioned possibly. Okay, so let's clarify the red flag of a builder that doesn't use a software platform. I feel like, and you can see, I know next to nothing about this end of the business, so you're going to correct me. I feel like on one hand, if I'm super buttoned up as a designer and I know I'm going to get my book done by break ground, then that's going to be a help to that builder that isn't tech and isn't project management savvy and doesn't really do it that way. And I feel like that's okay. If we have a good rapport, that's going to be positive. I also can see that if I'm so committed to this is what I'm bringing in such a highly organized manner and you're not reciprocating, that it could drive me crazy throughout the whole process. So is it first knowing yourself, Becky? Like if you've got it locked down, whether the other person is locked down or like you have to decide who you can work with too. It's not everybody is wrong, but it's like, does that make sense? Am I being clear?
Hmm.
Yeah, totally. I mean, definitely have your stuff locked down for sure. I mean, like your book. Um, and I think you help, designers develop the book. I mean,
Yes.
it's a lot of work.
Yes.
And some builders too, and even architects, like they'll want to see a sample book. Like, what have you done? What does your book look like before they would want to work with you? So I feel like if you got your stuff buttoned up, I mean, that's obviously a win-win for you. But I always look at the builder too and say, well, let me see your portfolio. I mean, 9 times out of 10, I already know what kind of houses they're building because of social media.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, what is your process? How do you communicate? Do you communicate through text, email? Are you in the project management software? How do I see where the schedule is? And that's where, like with Builder Trend, give them another plug.
We're
They
just racking up
have
the dollar bills here, aren't we?
maybe they'll give us a discount next month. But they have the Gantt chart. So you can go in there and you can see the schedule and you can communicate with the builder, and everything is housed into one platform for communication. So you're not scrolling through your phone looking for a text where he texted you about some paint color. I mean, it's a nightmare. So
Yes.
it's easy to track it in Builder Trend. And yeah, I mean,
What
the
does
schedule's
Gantt
in there,
mean?
everything.
I know it probably means something obvious, but what does Gantt chart mean? What does that stand for?
Mr. Builder.
Yeah, no, let's see. What does Gantt chart mean, Becky?
I just say it's a schedule.
Well,
I
I
don't really
know
like
It
that's
is.
what you mean. I just wonder what the acronym
it. Probably
means.
stands for, I don't know.
Oh, the word Gantt?
Yeah, what
Yeah,
does Gantt
Gantt.
mean?
I
Is
think
it
that's
like
a person.
Mr.
I think it's
Gantt?
actually a person that
That
figured
invented
out how
it.
to do, some of the first project management and cascading task that needs a
Oh,
predecessor and a
interesting.
successor and all that kind of stuff. I
I
think
mean,
Gantt was.
you better
Oh,
look that
okay.
up, Nate, because this will be
See,
amateur
I
hour.
think so.
I
Well,
just assumed that it meant, so it's like a Monday or an Asana. It's a Gantt thing. Okay. I
Yeah,
thought,
Gantt chart is a common project management thing.
gotcha.
So
So it's okay.
It shows you the schedule.
Yeah, I see.
Yeah.
I understood and by inference what it was, but I thought it was going to be like general activities,
Yeah, right?
something.
That's why I'm
related.
Googling it. I was like, all right, we better know what we're talking
I have
about.
I have my PMP, so Project Management Professional certification, and I'm 90% certain that it was the person that developed
Okay. And
that visual way to do things.
and I ask the question because there's somebody out there like me that's going, wait, what does Gantt stand for? You know what I mean? And probably most of them knew, but there's always the one that's like me. So,
And
okay.
me.
Yeah, right. Okay, so
Here we go. Henry Gantt. I just Googled it.
Nate for the win. Go, Nate.
He is an American mechanical engineer. He designed the Gantt chart. There we go.
There you go. Okay.
But so
okay.
Builder Trend has that. So,
Okay.
I mean, I don't know. It's going to make life easier for the designer. That's my 2 cents.
Mm-hmm.
Don't say I didn't warn you.
I'm gonna soften from the builder side.
Okay.
A little bit. I think if your builder has a process, right, and they have it well defined, it may not be electronic and it may not be exactly into one kind of a system, because you can manage projects with a spreadsheet. You can manage projects if you're good about email and tags and all those kinds of things. You can manage it inside those sorts of systems. So as long as they're upfront and say, here's how I manage my project, here's where you're going to go to look for stuff, and they have some kind of central repository or a way for you to find things, then I think you can be more comfortable as opposed to, I don't know, just give me the book or whatever.
Okay.
The other thing that I would want to clarify a little bit is, as the interior designer, for whom are you working? Are you working for the client or are you working for the builder? Because there's two different levels of expectation when you do something like that. If you're working for the client, then you want to work with the builder and provide everything, but you want to make sure that you have everything spec from the client and then turn it over to the builder and say, here's everything that the client has chosen. I will be back at, let me know when, right before drywall goes in, so that I can go and make sure that all the lights are in the right spot. And then let me know after drywall's in, so I can make sure that you uncovered and then we have those right things in the right spot. That kind of checklist would that's enough for most things.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I'd even recommend doing like a pre-construction meeting with the builder, just to talk about the build, talk about the client, figure out what are the allowances. Is this a fixed bid? Is this going to be a cost plus? Like how do I know what to pull for finishes? I mean, you have to know what the budget is and what the allowances are.
So where it gets and so where it gets a little wiggy in there is, to your points, both of you, it's like, are you the designer working for the homeowner? Are you the designer working for the builder? Or, is it the designer like hiring you and the builder? Or is it, the designer hires you and then you bring your builder in? Like, there's 16 different ways from Sunday that this triangle works. And then forget the landscape architect and the architect itself, right? That's like 2 more people involved in this, right?
That's why we all do it under one roof.
Do you guys do landscape architecture also?
I mean, I go
To
and buy
some
a couple
extent.
grasses and no, I mean, we're very minimalist on the outside. Nate doesn't like to mow. We try not to do a lot of, we
Yeah.
do an
Yeah.
allowance. But I mean, we're not
You're not doing
certified.
fountains and,
No, but we'll
brick
design. We
pavers and
design like our home plans. We're doing more of that now, designing that in house because that's another piece of the puzzle, right? You bring
yeah,
an
it is.
architect, and then you
Yes.
have a builder, and then you have a designer, and everybody's got to be on the same page.
That's
And
right.
so it's a lot of people to try to coordinate, and it
Yeah.
just, I mean, it works for us because we're all in under one household.
Yeah.
Yeah, we both wear two hats in the same process, so you're not communicating between 4 people, but just 2.
Yeah. So when you as a designer establish a relationship, you find a builder who has a good process, regardless if it's on a platform or, to your point, Nate, if you're basically saying, show me how you work, and
Yep.
you get the answer. If the answer is a straight path, or it's like, oh, around the corner, you're like, oh, my eyes are like glazing over because you're full of crap, right? Exactly, right. We get that. So you find the unicorn, you find the builder. What is the path? Like, what is it when you meet that builder and you start that relationship? Are you then saying, hey, builder, when you go to build your next house and you sell it to somebody, recommend me as the designer? Or are you saying, hey, builder, I'm going to get clients and I'm going to bring them to you? I know that it can happen both ways, but what are we, how many times a designer asks me, what should I say when I meet a builder? Like, what do I
Nate,
ask?
Nate, what should they say?
Right? Do I ask them? Will they refer me? Do I ask them? Can I, like, you know what I'm saying?
You know what I would say? I would say, do you want me to make your life easier? That's what I would say.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you
And then
show
I would
them.
say, how?
Show me, right? Show me, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's where like the whole book comes into play,
Sure.
right? I mean,
Yes.
you have to spell every little, I mean, the more detail that you can get for a builder and on your specs and everything, I mean, it'll make his life easier.
Yeah.
I
You know
think,
what's
right, Nate?
funny is I have
Yeah.
designers that have said to me, designers that have gone through the LUU course, Design for Construction 101 and 201, which if you do those 2 courses, you are golden. You know how to make a book. You can do this process. You can present it. You can, to your point, you can do your interview with the builder and say, this is how I deliver a project to you. And I've had designers that have gone through the course, have done that, and builders are just like jaw drop and like, okay, let's work together, right? But then I've had designers say, what if the builder doesn't care? What if the builder's like, blah, blah, blah? And my brain is like, then move on to another builder. But,
Yeah.
right? Like, I mean, you can't make somebody appreciate a process or change their freewheeling way to do it, right?
Yeah,
I agree.
you're not gonna convert anybody,
Right.
right? If
Right.
they're
That's
set
what
in
it
their
is.
ways, a good builder will understand the value of what you're delivering and how you're going to make their life easier. Like there's somebody tallied it up. There's like 1 million decisions in building a house or something like that.
Oh my God.
It's a
And that
serious
doesn't even
amount of
seem like an exaggeration. It actually does
No,
not
when
even
you
seem
really
like
think
an
about all the
exaggeration.
things that have to be decided,
Yeah.
there's so many things. And if you tell the builder, I'm going to take 30% of these decisions, so you don't have to ask the client anymore. I'm going to take it off your plate. I'm going to get it all decided and sorted out for them. And then I'm going to deliver you answers to 30% of the questions that you would have had to ask. That's a good pitch.
That's interesting. And I would have thought it's higher than 30%. And you're just like happy if 30% are covered.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Right? I would have thought if I'm doing a design spec book, a complete book the right way, I would have thought, okay, out of 1 million questions, there's maybe 2,000 left. But you're like, no, it just get 30% off my plate and I'll be thrilled.
Yeah. I would be happy with that.
Well,
That's
I think the
crazy.
other
Do you
thing
think you
too,
could do
just
that,
like,
Becky? Can you take 30% of the questions off my plate?
These two are funny.
do you want the middle finger?
You guys got to watch this on YouTube. The faces that they're making at each other.
No, but I'm just so talking, like listening to you. So there's scenarios, right? A variety of them. So you're a designer and you have a client, but maybe they don't have a builder, or maybe they're wanting to build a house, so they're coming to you and they're like, hey, we're thinking about building a house. We love your design aesthetic. That's where you could step in and say, well, these are the builders that I would recommend, or I've worked with in the past. And then again, vice versa. I mean, if there's a builder, some of the build teams like Brad, they have a designer on staff or in-house.
Right.
But some of the builders don't. And so that's where, as a designer, you can try to get your foot in the door with that said builder. Now, I know around here, even builders will have relationships with a certain designer. And so every time their build sign goes out, I see a designer sign go out. And I'm like, oh, that's the designer that works with that builder. So those relationships are kind of harder to get, move into. But
Yeah.
I think if you can find a builder that doesn't have a designer on staff and you guys can mesh well with the design aesthetic, I mean, it could be a win-win for both people. But
So when the designer is pitching the builder to go along with him, right? What is a reasonable, how does a designer come up with what that price should be? And I gotta believe we're talking about, like, I always call it hardscapes. I don't know if that's the actual word, like the things that go in order for you to get a CO, right? Like up to that point, everything
Mm-hmm.
that has to be picked by the designer and the homeowner to get the CO. So, because I also get the phone calls and the emails from designers like, this builder, it's $1 million home, and he wants to give me $1,500 to do this, and I'm just like, why would you get out of bed for $1,500? Like, I don't understand that. Like, and and
Right.
and then we have this conversation of, well, how many hours will it take you to do that? And then what happens is invariably it leads to the conversation of, what's the least common denominator that I can crank out, as opposed to actually thoughtfully coming to the process. So what's that niche point where the builder does understand the value and is willing to pay what the designer's value is worth in that equation for a spec build, or a build for, maybe it's for a homeowner, but the designer is coming with the builder. You see, that's where I find, at least in the emails I get, that's where I find that the designer is often forced into a lower price point. And the hang over the head is, well, I'm going to do 3 more homes this year, or I'm going to do 6 more homes if you want them all. Like, this is the number. And I've got another designer down the block who wants my business. Like, you know what I'm saying?
yeah, I mean, I look at it in, I don't know, because we're all under one roof, so I can kind of
It's harder for you
guesstimate,
guys.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, it is. I mean, I can see what you're saying. Nate's always like, just look at how many hours you think you would have into, doing the cabinetry elevations, doing the selections, and then, just figure out kind of a flat fee. And
Right,
you just
right.
say, these are the deliverables, this is the scope, this is the flat fee. But I think there's a disconnect with builders, like not knowing what looks good. Like, no offense, Nate. But I mean, there's certain tile vendors that I love, and there's certain, cabinetry and countertops, and I know what those things cost. And so I just have to clearly communicate that to a builder and say, hey, these are how many bathrooms you have, and here's the square footage of tile. And I run the numbers in my head. And so I know I can't do an allowance for this bathroom if you're only giving me like $3,000 for a tile. I mean,
Right.
so kind of just trying to get those kinks worked out. I mean, it's hard if you don't know your products and your pricing. And then
Mm-hmm.
Nate knows what his price is per square foot for building a house based on kind of where our allowances are at. So there's a lot of moving parts. And that's where, if you don't have a good relationship with the builder, like what you were saying, oh, do it for this and I'll give you 3 more, be like, sorry, dude, like I know my worth, I know my value, like, see ya. I mean, because you know
Yeah.
what, 9 times out of 10, I listen to your podcast all the time and you're like, something better is going to come along. Like, why do you want to waste your time on this little job when that takes up a slot, right? Like, for
Yes.
a bigger
Yes.
job that can come
Yeah.
through. So
Yeah.
I don't know,
I
Nate,
think
you can chime in. Maybe I'm just
Uh,
talking nuts.
no, I think when you get into that situation, 9 times out of 10, the designer may have been pulled in after the fact,
okay.
right?
So
And
he
so,
doesn't have the budget built in for it.
yeah, exactly. So if you can get in pre-construction as a designer and show your worth and explain, really you have to sell the client then, even though you're working through the builder, you're going to have to sell the client on the value that the interior designer is going to bring,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
maybe it's a total of all the allowances, and then you take a percentage of the allowances or something like that. Or you
Mm.
can try to make margin if you're selling them furniture or those kinds of things. But if you're being pulled in after the fact and it's a fixed bid, and now uh,
That's what's hard.
Well,
that's
and
what's
I would think
hard.
if you're getting pulled in after the fact, then the client has to be paying for you. That's
Yeah,
like
Mhm.
and
that's the thing, right? Like you have to get hired by the client, right?
yeah,
Yeah. I think what it is and I do think it happens to less seasoned designers in the sense that you there's a moment where you want to get in with the builder, right?
hmm
And maybe you are in before the client is there. You're working with the builder and there's an intention to build the next project. And there is a tendency. Look, we've all been there in business. I'm going to say yes. I'm just going to get the job. I'll figure it out later. But I had a situation in a coaching client recently in the last couple of months where she had been with this builder for like 2 years, and the rate that was happening was at like an entry level rate of like $65 or $75 an hour when you add up the flat fee of what the hours she
hmm
was spending to do it. And it was this whole conversation about, well, when do we draw the line in the sand for this guy? Right? Like, when do we draw the line in the sand and say, you've been getting this at below rates? And I came in, wanted to make an impression, wanted to establish the relationship, but you're selling $2 million homes and you're parceling me out a couple of grand over here. Like, what are we doing? And my thing is, as a consumer, if I'm in the market for even a $1 million home, if I if that builder said to me, "Oh, this house is 1,100,000, but in order to have his designer or her designer as the builder on the job and the fair rate to pay the designer is 15K," if you looked at me, don't tell me the line item is for the designer. Just say this home is 1,115,000. Am I saying no?
right,
Like, I'm not saying, come on, right? And so that's where I'm like, half the time I want to coach the damn builders. Like, get the builders over here. Let's talk to these guys. Like, why are you looking so small? Having conversations with Brad Levitt with yourselves, the Cadillacs. There's such value that the designer brings. Like, why are you nickel and diming the designer in this process?
right.
I remember Brad was telling me that you can save, like, it's like, I think he was saying it was like an average of like $10,000 more a month every time a project went past deadline.
Yeah,
But
I believe
meanwhile,
it.
Yeah,
you have a designer on and she helps you get on time. And so without the designer, it goes over project 2 months. That's 20K, but you didn't want to give the designer 15K. Like, what are we doing here? I don't know. I get
I
crazy about
agree.
this
I
stuff.
mean, I think Brad, you said Brad's got in-house designer, and that he won't work with a client unless the designer's involved. I mean,
No, I
yeah,
don't think he has in-house designers.
oh, he doesn't.
No, I do not believe that's his model. And he might have changed since I interviewed him. But what it is if you come to him and you say, "Hey, I saw you this way or the other way, or my friend referred you, I want you to build my house." His answer in context of all the ways he takes the criteria of saying yes to the project is one of them is, do you have a designer? Did you hire an interior designer? And if
hmm
the answer is no, we've built 4 houses before, we're going to work with you directly, we understand how to do it. He's like, no, you're not. Yeah,
right.
actually, you're not. You know what I mean? And then what happens is if you don't have a designer, then he has his whatever
Okay.
go
Yep.
tos that he can say, well, here's 3 or 4 that I've worked with. They're all very good. Go
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
interview them. And when you
Yep.
decide, come back.
Yeah,
Yeah,
But
yeah. So
he,
he
he
should be
just
the
won't
one
do it.
talking to the builders.
Oh, well, he does, right? He's got his
Yeah.
yep.
podcast, the Brad Levitt podcast. And of course, he speaks at KBIS and IBS every year and all the
Yeah, yeah,
things. But,
yeah.
there's designers that are in that crunch period. It's before you've done enough and you have enough experience that you can really attract that builder that's like at your level, Nate, that understands it and that
Right.
gets it and would rather do the project with a designer and understands that everybody has to make money on this job. That's just how it is. And the client, for the builder that's like, oh, I can't add it to the price because the client won't pay. It's like, but when the builder goes late, the client's paying. Like, who's
Right.
paying for that? Like, you know what I mean? They're not like,
Yeah.
here's a donation from my checkbook. You know what I'm saying? So
For the ones that are stuck, like they've been paying and they're not getting the percentage of the bill that they think they should be getting, or the fees, they're still stuck at that kind of entry level rate. Ultimately, I think you start building something in the background, and then you just say, listen, we're having a rate increase,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
We're prepping you for the next build.
yep,
This is our new rate. And if you don't like it, I'm sorry,
yeah.
but
Yeah,
that's
and
Sorry, not sorry.
now.
that's ultimately the advice that we ended up crafting that. I was like,
Yeah.
here, you're going to say, look, I've been doing it. And the thing was, I remember the actual fear was, she knew that the builder truly didn't value the designer, wants the designer around, but not that true value and appreciation like you have and like Brad
Mm-hmm.
has, because she ultimately was originally got her foot in the door because the designer he was working with raised rates. And so he went to a
Yep.
less experienced newer. So she was saying to me, well, what happens if he dumps me? And I'm like, well, what's the alternative? You keep working at 75 an hour?
Yep.
Like, so
Yeah.
do we care at that point? But you do have to kind of get to that point as a business owner. And it's like, like Vinny always says, my husband, it's like, if you make $1 million and you spend $1,000,001, like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
So if you're going out there and you're doing 4 builds a year for this guy at 75 an hour, and you could be doing 3 builds for somebody else at 245 an hour, what are we doing? Let them go.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's tough because the bird in the hand, right? And of course the relationship was there. And I think if I recall she likes it. It's easy in the sense there's a rhythm, to your point, like they have that rhythm and they finish each other's sentences. But you do have to ultimately just say no,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Rate
the math is
increase.
the big thing. If you double your rates, you can work for one client and make the same amount of money as 2 clients with twice as much work.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
Did you
It's
and
hear
will it
that on
be
a podcast, Nate?
no, that's common
I
math.
think
That's like
I swear she said that. I've heard it before.
well, what's so funny is
it's not rocket
as
science.
it's not. Well, that's so funny. Now I'm going to tell you, this is a funny story. It's so funny because today is Wednesday, March 20th. We're recording this. Okay. On Monday, the 18th, we had a post go out on Instagram that basically said, you're better off working for less people and having them pay higher prices.
Mhm.
Now, I don't exactly have posts that go off the charts that people are like, blah, blah, blah. But there was like, as of a day and a half ago, there was like 779 likes. There was like 160 comments, right? And the whole community was like, amen, that's right, blah, 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 like this, right? And a couple of people were like, I mean, you have to still charge your value. You just don't charge people higher prices. And, I nicely said, like,
Yeah.
if you know me, that's what I mean. Right. And then what was funny was I went live the next day on Instagram and I'm like, you guys know this is like a business principle, right? Like,
Yeah.
I didn't make this up. It's called the iron triangle. You have price, service, and quality. Pick 2. You
Pick
Yeah.
cannot
2.
deliver all
Nate, you say
3,
that all the time.
right? See?
I sell that to clients. Good, fast, or cheap. You pick 2.
That's it.
We
Good, fast, or cheap. Pick the price, quality, or service. Pick 2. But you can't have quality and service and low
nope.
price. That's right. Like and so it was so funny because that's so funny that you're like, did you hear that on the podcast? He's like, that's business. I'm like, I know. I didn't make it up either. Oh
Like,
my
I've
God.
heard this before.
Yes, yes, yes. Well, when you run a business for 4 decades, it's so funny too, because one time I was reading a book by Michael Hyatt, and I shouldn't say reading, listen to an Audible. Who's got the time to sit and read a book anymore, right? But and you do, good for you,
Oh,
Nate.
I
Good
love
for
reading.
you. Oh, good for you. I appreciate that so much. But I'm like in the car a lot, back and forth to the beach house. So I'm always on my Audible books and podcasts and stuff. And I was listening to a book by Michael Hyatt about, I don't know, 7 or 8 months ago. And, I don't know if you know who Michael Hyatt is, but he's huge, prolific author and speaker and, on business and business principles and everything. And I 1000% respected his intro to the book. He said to the effect of, after like 4 decades or 5 decades, whatever he's in business, he goes, I really can't tell you which of these are my actual ideas and which are the things I've just learned through all the ways. You know what I mean? He said, so if I share something in this book and I don't name who taught me that or who originally said it, just know I'm not stealing from them knowingly. It's like, but that's just it. Business becomes the tenets and the principles of business. And we didn't make them up. But if you're successful, you're following them, right?
Yeah. That's funny.
Yeah, it is funny. Yeah. Oh my goodness.
The other thing
anyway,
I would tell you, Luann, is that, the other thing too is for designers that are wanting to work with builders or learn more about the build process, there are some other, I won't even name the name, but there's another podcast out there that Nate listens to. Well, we both do, but it's mainly geared more towards builders. And so they have a lot of really good.
In addition to Brad's podcast, you mean?
Yeah.
Tell us what it is.
It's the Build Show with Matt Reisinger.
Matt Reisinger, yeah.
It's like the Build Show. But it's interesting to hear him, and you can pick up a lot of really good little morsels about, from the build side and what kind of frustrations they have and kind of how they're dealing with it. And I'll never forget one of his guests, and maybe it was Matt, they said, the lowest bid is going to end up being the most expensive. And that's one of the things when we're meeting with clients. It's like, what is your budget? And, well, I want to stay around X amount of dollars, and I'm going to go talk to a couple other builders. And I tell them, okay, it's a numbers game, shell game, make sure you get a really detailed bid. Our bids are very detailed line items, so they can see like, this is the appliance package that was spec'd. You're not just getting an allowance. People don't know. You get a bid that's $8,000 for an appliance allowance, and they think that's Thermador. And I'm like, no, that's going to be like $30,000, $40,000. But people don't know. And so I try to educate them. If you're going to go talk to another builder, it's a numbers game. Lowest bid is going to be the most expensive. Make sure you're getting, exactly what you're getting for that number that they're going to build that house for or try to.
You know what it is, Becky? You're so right. Because the thing about that is if you are working with a client who to some extent is a luxury client, right? And building a home is a luxury process. So that automatically, if one, then the other sort of, right? But we have clients out there who are fine with this level, whatever level of appliance packages, and then the next level, and then level even above that. But to your point, as the designer, if you really know somebody wants and expects a monogram appliance outfit and the builder is speccing 8K, yeah, okay, he's the cheapest builder, he's the cheapest bid, but we're not done. You're going to be adding dollar bills. You think this is the quote, but it's not. It's not done yet. And so I think, I know a lot of designers get stuck in how can they get the actual price if everything hasn't been spec'd. But I think that's where, as a designer, it's up to you to know the intersection of your client. And like you said earlier, Becky, what things cost. Is this client a client that's going to be okay with box store tile? Or is this a client that's going to want tile from wherever is a fancy tile place? I don't know which one they are, but you know what I'm saying, right?
You want me to say their name? Maybe you'll get paid.
All right, let's do it. No, that's awesome. I love it. You guys are great. You guys are terrific. I appreciate the both of you being here with me today and sharing all your expertise. You're tons of fun. Something about builder couples. Do you guys know Paul and Sue Cadillac? In Boston,
I think were they at the Build Show 2 years ago?
Yes. Yeah.
They do a lot of like social media stuff.
Oh my God, they're a riot.
Yeah.
I mean, what they are is the straight man and the funny guy. Like Paul is an absolute lunatic, and Susan spends all her day just looking at him, going, Okay.
Oh,
Yeah, we're
that's the
flips.
exact opposite of Nate and I.
Yeah,
That's right. You guys are the opposites, right? Like it's so fun.
Becky is a lunatic.
Yeah.
I can attest to that. So
Yeah, no, you guys, you are like your same energy vibe, but it is reversed. So,
Nate's the grumpy old man.
that's so funny. Look at
we
his
used
face.
to we actually were like an inverse Chip and Joanna Gaines.
Oh, right. Yes, exactly.
Who's that?
Exactly.
Who are they? Who are those people?
Right, right. That is
No,
true. That's that
I'm
same
more of the
dynamic too.
jokester. Nate's more serious.
Yeah,
Probably
yeah.
the opposite of what you were just telling me about the Cadillacs.
Yes, exactly opposite, but fun, altogether fun. So we'll have to all get together in Vegas next winter at KBIS and
Yeah,
do
Oh,
that'd be
eyeball
cool.
to
I
eyeball.
cannot
That would be
survive
fun.
Vegas. Every time we go, I'm just like dragging like the time change, and then like there's always something going on, and
I know.
trying to see all the vendors. It's
Yeah,
overwhelming, but
yeah. It is. It is. But it's fun and it's a good time to
it is
reconnect
fun.
with all the people. Yeah. So, well, thank you tons for being with me today. I really appreciate it, you
Thank
guys.
you. Anytime.
You're welcome.
So much fun, aren't they? I just got such a kick out of them. Becky and Nate obviously work great together, and it has a lot to do with even though and when and you should have a process and a system. That next level, that developing the relationship with your own business partner and your exterior partnerships of that shorthand, right? So recently on a Window Treatment for Profit podcast, I had a conversation with Jessica Harling from Behind the Design. And the episode was about the different compensation packages for your various employees. But in that conversation, when we were talking about the installer compensation package, we talked about the same idea about that shorthand. So whether it's you as a designer and your window treatment pro, or it's a window treatment pro and their go-to installer, or in the case of Nate and Becky, between themselves or with the build team, having that partner that you go to and that gets you and understands you and you're in your systems and processes, but the relationship over time develops that shorthand where the things right? You know the things they want because they've asked for the same thing over and over again. And it just increases the communication and the flow of the project, right? It makes it better. And Becky said that you should expect this from a builder you partner with. Okay, she gave you permission to expect that. She explained that yes, you can expect that they should become familiar with your style, your process, and vice versa. You should become familiar with them and their style and their process as well. Okay. But the idea is that you're not asking too much when you ask for the builder partner to look at this as a harmonious thing. Okay. And I guess it should be easy to think that that would happen and easy to expect it. But, to the extent that building a house is easy, right? Haha. So you get her point. And I think what I heard in it is that you're not wrong to want it. You're not wrong to think it should happen. And if it's not happening, keep moving, keep looking for the builder that is looking for this synergy, right? That's looking for the best outcome of the project and not about, what I always say, do you want to be right or you want to get what you want? Because people go around all day long making sure they're right. But often in that, assuring that you're right, you don't get what you want. So I love her permission and her explanation that it's possible and that you can have it. All right. The next criteria that Becky talked about is the importance and the efficiency that comes if you work with a builder who has a project management system. Okay. Now, here's the thing: if you have your stuff buttoned up, maybe you've been in this game a long time, okay, and you have a very specific process, then maybe the builder will work within your process. But the idea is somebody should have one. I think that's the thing. And her experience is that, especially if the builder has a project management system, it's going to make both of your lives easier. All right. And to this end, Nate mentioned you or the builder can have an organized system, and it may not be on an electric project management platform. He said it could be a spreadsheet. The thing is that there is a standard and there is communication around where the information is kept, and there is an understanding of how things will work between you and the builder. It is not left to chance, because you know what happens when it's left to chance. That's when you get the frantic call at 8:30 in the morning, right in the middle of dropping your kids off to school, or right in the middle of down dog at yoga class. Who wants that? No one, right? So I have to say, I would be remiss if I did not mention Luann University's Design for Construction 101 and 201 with Jenny Slingerland and Kathleen Anderson. So many of your colleagues, hundreds at this point, literally have taken these two courses and rave about how much more capable, confident, and competent they are for having both Jenny and Kat's lessons and hindsights on how to deliver an awesome project to both the client and the builder. The result of doing this work in Luann University is that you level up your deliverable, which enables you to level up the builders that you attract and that you work with. This results in better projects with better budgets, higher profit margins, and more respect. We will launch again in winter 2025. Go to luannuniversity.com to learn more and to get on the email list to be notified when we open early bird registration at the end of 2024. Okay? Thank you, Becky and Nate. It was a pleasure learning about your business, and we appreciate your insights and all the things. And you two are just a fun duo to be with. And it was my pleasure, actually, to see such a serious, high-achieving business run by two very down-to-earth individuals who don't take themselves too seriously. It was tons of fun. And thank you for showing up today and listening. I appreciate you so. Decide to be excellent. Thank you for joining me today. This podcast is a production of Luann Nigara, Inc. If you want to know more about me, my books, or Luann University, go to luannnigara.com. And if you are interested in having WindowWorks help you with your next window treatment or awning project in the New York, New Jersey metro area, go to windowworksnj.com to learn more. Have an excellent day.